Welcome to this week's piece. So I picked up this set. We're actually going to be working on this little desk vanity situation this video, and then next video we will be doing the dresser. So it does have a few scratches, a burn mark. Actually, I only saw that one burn mark. There was another little one later that I saw once I sanded everything down, but it's got a bit of stuff that needs to be handled, but it's in really good condition considering. So this is vintage. It's certainly not antique. It is made of plywood, which doesn't look like it has mahogany veneer, but the top and around the edges, because I was going to sand down and keep the entire top wood, but since it's the plywood, you can see even through their stains and stuff, the plies. So I decided to paint the entire thing. It did come with this icky stool. I'm pretty sure it's not original to the piece because the legs don't match, but it came with it, so I'll probably end up redoing that to go with it later. So as we do, start by taking off the hardware and getting it cleaned up and prepped. Now, as I said, I was planning on painting the top, but I had to go through and get out the big scratches and try and break down as much of the burn mark that was there. But as I was doing it, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just paint the lip around it and keep the top wood. So that's what I ended up doing. The burn mark is still visible, but we're going to do a couple things to help us out with that. So I couldn't sand it all the way off. And I did find, you'll get these on these older kind of like vintage pieces where they're trying to save money on supplies and things, and that's why this is done out of plywood and why they use such a thick dark finish on it. It's so that they could hide some flaws that they put in. But so this actually had some filler, and they usually use this weird kind of thick white plasticky looking filler on it, but you can never see it underneath their stains, which I think is incredible that they did that. So they're essentially doing what we're doing, just with stain. So I'll show you that part closer up. The rest of the piece I'm just getting a scuff sand because we just want to help with adhesion. I would actually recommend priming this, but I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing with it, so I didn't prime it. Turned out totally fine. You can also shellac it if you're having issues with bleed through, because like I said, there was some mahogany veneer on this, and that is a for sure bleeder in almost any case. So like I said, shellac it or prime it, whichever you want to do. But here we're going to be using this fast set. I'm going to do some raised stenciling, and this is my favorite product to use for raised stenciling. It is so inexpensive, and you mix it up to your favorite consistency. I typically do, like peaks. If they'll hold their shape and I can hold it up, then it's good enough for me. I don't have any measurements. I just do it by look and by feel, and you'll kind of get it too once you start doing it. If you decide to use this stuff, you'll just kind of decide your preference and go from there. So I was kind of figuring out what stencils I wanted to use. And then so I figured out this larger one for the middle drawer, and then the side drawers will have their own stencil design as well. And it's super easy to do this. I take a large kind of putty knife, I dip it in the fast set and swipe it on. If you don't want it to be super textured looking, make sure that you get it kind of as smooth as possible. And then however thick you leave it on is going to be the thickness of your raised stencil. So if you want a thinner raised stencil, do it pretty close to your stencil. And if you want it a little bit thicker, then you can pile it up a little higher on your stencil, and when you pull it off, it'll leave a thicker, not impression, but a thicker embossed print. So here I'm just covering up the parts of the stencil that I don't want to come through. You saw how easy it was to wipe off that little extra piece there, but I didn't want to have to wipe off everything. So I just covered with tape any areas that could potentially get some through it. And this is just kind of easy. You're just figuring out how you want your end results to look and doing your designs that way. With this stuff, it does dry very quickly, so you want to either work quickly, or if you're doing a larger piece, you'll have to clean your stencil off while you're using it. Because it dries super fast, which is awesome for getting to paint quickly, but not awesome when you have a whole bunch to do and your thing turns into a piece of cement. So that little white spot right there, that's what I was telling you about the top, that I was like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to keep this or not. But what we're going to do is do 2 layers of stain. So I'm going to start out with the walnut, which is already a dark stain in and of itself, and do a coat of that. And then once you kind of get your first layer down, you can decide what you need after that. This piece, like I said, has a mahogany veneer, so I knew it was going to pull a little bit red. So I'll deal with that in a bit. But for now, I'm letting that dry, and I literally had no idea how I was going to finish this piece. I started painting the entire thing white. I don't know why. I thought I was going to do a very light look. Skip this part. It was not necessary, but I did. I painted the entire thing white because I was going to go a different direction. Didn't really know what direction I was going in, but I just started, and then I was like, I don't want this. But conveniently, the white shows a lot of bleed through where it's going to bleed through. I tried my best not to sand through any of the surface sealer, but in some cases it does do that, or if there's a deep scratch, it'll bleed through there. So the white's going to help me. It wasn't a complete lost cause, because then I just went back over any spots that looked kind of pinkish and I just sprayed them with shellac. I didn't show that, but that's how you get rid of bleed through. So it wasn't a complete lost cause, it just, was mostly. So now that the first layer of stain is done, I'm going to take this ash gray color, and it is a warm gray tone, and it will actually cool down the walnut that's on there, because the walnut had more red because of the mahogany. You kind of just have to know what's going to happen to your stuff and know what stains can work together and not work together, and what shades will go good together and not go good together. So that's all just playing with everything and figuring out what works for you. But this is the route I chose for this one, and these 2 things covered, like I said, the burn spot and that weird filler that they had in there so well. I'm so pleased with how this turned out, and I really like the interesting color that it created. And then of course I seal with my Chalk Mountain Satin Poly. And now at this point, I literally went through my selection and picked out colors that I liked and that I kind of wanted to do on this, because again, I have no idea where I'm headed with it. I did know that I wanted to start with the legs being darkest, because I just like the way that that looks. And then I faded everything up into that. So that's kind of how I start, and I feel like when there's pieces like this where I'm having trouble with coming up with an idea, I will just start, and kind of starting helps guide me and figure out what's going to happen to it. So I almost just have no idea and hope that it comes to me along the way. The blending on the legs is just going back and forth between the 2 colors. This is going to be the base coat essentially, because again, the white isn't helping at all. So your base coats, you don't have to worry about too much. You just kind of want to get them on there and see if you like the way that it looks, and you can make your changes on your second coat. So you never have to worry too much the first go round. You just get an idea and then perfect it later on. So legs are easy. They just go back and forth between the 2 colors, and the only issue with legs that you have to worry about is making sure that you were looking at all 4 sides. I cannot tell you how many times I've done a piece and you'll go back and look later and you've like missed a section because you couldn't see it because it's on one of the legs. It's very frustrating. So I can't say that enough. Check your legs as you're painting them. And I have had several of you want me to slow down when it comes to the blending and things. So on this part, I'm going to slow down so you can see exactly what I'm doing for this blend. So I've got my Goblin Gray and I've got the Sea Glass, and I'm taking my blending brush. This is just the small round Chalk Mountain brush. I really like it for the swirl style of blending that I'm doing here. There's tons of different ways that you guys can blend your pieces. You do whatever works best for you. I go back and forth depending on what piece I'm doing and how I want the blend to look, and so it changes a lot. But for this one in particular, I'm using a clean blending brush, and by clean I mean I've already used it, but I've kind of sprayed it with water and wiped off the excess paint that was already on it, so it's mostly clean. I'm spraying my piece down to make sure that the paint is still wet and workable, and then I just make these little swirls with my blending brush in between the two colors, back and forth until I like the way that it looks. You can keep going. You can add more paint. There's so many things that you can do to make your blend work out. And you want to make like your circles, I keep them pretty tight, and then as I go out, they can get a little larger as I go further up. And you'll see swirls maybe in your first coat depending on the paint or the colors that you're using, and that's totally okay. Like I said, it will all fix itself on the second coat. So again, don't be too concerned about your first coat. Just get it on there, swirl everything out, and you'll see it just slowly start to come together. And then the same with this pink. It goes right into the sea glass. And then I'll take my blending brush, get the paint wet, and do the exact same process. Just putting them next to each other and blending out. Tiny little swirls. And I'll try and do this on the next time I do a different style of blend. Slow it down so that you can see exactly what's happening and not speed up like I normally do. I just feel like I do so many blending videos, I don't want to bore you, but since I have been getting so many comments about slowing down so you can kind of see how it works, that's what I'm doing here. And again, same process with the Devonshire cream into the rose petal. I just put it on next to the other color, whatever two colors you're using, I put them next to each other. If they overlap a little bit, that's fine. I just try and keep those brushes mostly uncontaminated, but if they contaminate a little, I'm never too worried about it. And then I'll go back in with my blending brush and start from there. Again, small little swirls, blending them together, and then moving out from there. Easy peasy. And then for the rest of the blends on this, for the second coat, I'll kind of speed those up because I feel like if this didn't help you, I don't know that I can. So I just want to show this example real quick. The right side I didn't love, but the left side that I did. So when I went to do my second coat, I just copied what I did on the left side onto the right, because the right I felt like had too much of the blue on the bottom drawer and none of the pink, and the left side I added just a tiny bit of the pink into the top part of the bottom drawer, and I really like that better. So I just wanted to show that as I'm doing a piece, I'm just kind of hoping for the best, and y'all usually pick out the part that I like the most. And then that little lip right there in the center drawer at the very bottom, I felt like that was too dark, so on the second coat I'm just lightening it up. Just don't be afraid to make mistakes with this. It's just paint. You can always fix it, and like I said, the second coat that's the magic. Now we will super speed through the rest of the blend because, again, it's the same thing. I'm just kind of adjusting my color placements to where I like them a little bit better for the second coat, and it's the exact same process with blending. I'm using the two colors, I blend those two colors together with the blending brush, and then I will then work on the next color and do the same thing. You may notice that I'm working from top to bottom this time. There's no rhyme or reason for that. That's just how I felt in this moment. I worked from the lightest colors down to the darkest colors. And I do that sometimes, but not all the time. Doesn't really matter to me. Now these colors just seemed a little too bright for my liking, so I'm taking a gray wash. I keep some of my washes on hand, and then I just toned down this Iron Gate wash with a little bit of white so that it wasn't as deep. So it's just kind of a mid-tone gray, and you just work in small sections. Put it on, wipe it back with a rag. And so this is going to help the raised stencil stand out a little more as well, because it's going to get stuck in the low points around the stencil, and then also deepen up the colors so they're not so vivid. You do want to make sure that your paint is super dry for this. If you put on a wash on paint that is not fully dry, you will wipe off your paint as you're doing it, which will then make you very upset. And then I'm also using this wash with the ragging technique with my rag that already has some of the wash on it, and I'm deepening up the edges and kind of using it to shade the drawers. If you wanted to, you could totally stop and not do the wash and call this piece done and seal it with just the blended colors. If you like the really light look, you of course would be doing any colors that you wanted to do. This was just a little too, I don't know, like rainbows and unicorn color for me. I like deeper, richer colors. I don't know if I'm even explaining that right, but it just, when I looked at it, I thought it was really pretty, but it reminded me of cotton candy. So I was like, I can't have that. It just doesn't. So, gray wash. Now to seal the body of this piece, I'm taking Chalk Mountain's Copper Wax. This is not a gilding wax. This is actually a sealing wax, and it just has just the most subtle, beautiful glow to it. And so I'm sealing the entire piece just using a small wax brush because I want to make sure I get into all the details around the raised stencils and then into all the recesses in the desk itself. So I'm laying it on pretty thick, and then once this absorbs into the piece, I'll just go back with a cloth and wipe it back. So we're going to add yet another layer. Since I did the wash around the edges a little extra there, I'm also going to take some black wax and do the same thing. So really intensify the depth around the edges because those drawers are curved a little bit, and I like the way that it looks to have the center point being really, really light and the outer edges being darker because of the shape of the drawers. And then anywhere else on the desk too that I felt like needed it, I did the same thing. And you know we're not done there. So I've got my gilding waxes out. I'm using silver, gold, and copper. So because we did the copper wax to seal the entire piece, I felt like copper had to be in the metals. And then the hardware, I actually just cleaned them. They were original brass hardware, so I just cleaned them really well and shined them up. So I'm kind of using all the metals in this because it's kind of a mottled blend anyways. And I just like the way that that looks. So I'm taking a very, very soft, this is like a very small mop brush. And I'm taking the silver gilding wax and I'm going around the edges and very, very, very lightly with this brush, I'm circling it out and blending it in to again add more layers and depth to the edges and gently bringing it into the middle. This is the base that I did on all the drawers. And then I kind of just added spots of it along the rest of the desk as I went. This brush, I really wish I would have washed it before I did this because it kept shedding all over it and it was very frustrating. This was just out of a pack of Michael's craft brushes. So after the silver around the actual base of the drawer, I took the copper and did the outermost portion of the raised stencil and I hit all of those high points. If it touched along the back side of it, I wasn't worried about it because I'm going to slightly blend those in as well. So none of that really bothered me at all. And this is such a crazy colored blend, all these different things going on and happening to it. It kind of just added to everything to have the little mess ups in there because, like I said, we'll blend them out. So I went from the copper into the gold and then into the silver on the very outermost pieces of the raised stencil. And then I went back with the mop brush and, like I said, blended them a bit. And I feel like this is just going to be one of those pieces where you guys are just going to have to trust me that in real life you can see so many different colors and blends and all these crazy things going on, and it's so hard for me to catch it on camera. So I tried to catch them in photos as much as I can. I tried to show a little video of it moving the light, but it's never as good as it is in person. I hope you guys super, super love this one because it turned out so good. And I can't even tell you. And these ones make me the happiest because when I just look at a piece and have no idea what to do with it, and then when it turns out, I'm just like, huh, thank you. Thank you, because I didn't want to have to throw away this piece out of rage. And it didn't happen this time. So I'm not going to be in this video because I still have a whole other dresser to do and I have the mirror that needs to be finished and all that. I just wanted to get this one out real quick so you guys could see it. And then on next week's video, we'll have everything all put together for you so you can see the dresser that goes with this and the mirror and all the things. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I adore you all. Thank you so, so, so much for subscribing and liking and just leaving the most marvelous comments. You guys know you're my favorite humans. I will see you guys next week.